We are lucky today to be joined by some incredible panelists with deep expertise in audio, podcasting, and intelligence and measurement. I'm Cameron Hendrix, one of the co-founders at Magellan AI. Why don't you kick us off?
Oh, I love going first. Thank you.
Always.
I'm Frisbie. I run the AdsWizz business. So we're an audio ad tech platform and content management platform and owned by SiriusXM. Hand it over to you.
Hi, I'm Krystina Rubino. I'm the GM of Offline and Audio at Right Side Up. We are a growth marketing consultancy specializing in connecting the best talent in the world with the brands that need their help. And we have one of the largest podcast advertising practices in the world.
And I'm Selah. I'm the CRO of Libsyn. We are a hosting platform for podcasters, the largest independently owned hosting company and monetization company in podcasting in the world.
Awesome. Well, let's start by talking about the opportunity for brands in podcasting. One of the things that we've tracked at Magellan AI is there are over 1,000 new brands that have entered the podcast advertising space every quarter for the past couple of years. And yet plenty of major advertisers still haven't yet committed. So Krystina, let's start with you. You work with brands that have maxed out their core digital channels. What's stopping them from moving into podcasting sooner?
I think it's twofold. The average media mix, depending on how it's planned, right? I have, I'm a independent agency, traditional agency, and holdco, like borderline PTSD, have done all of the things. So my thing is, what do you think about the planning tools that the average brand's agency has in terms of enterprise, for example? Up until recently, none of the media planning tools, software, etc., even indexed podcasting effectively. And so when you think about these like grandfathered in contracts of like, oh, is it in MRI? Is it in this one? Is it in that one? And you're like, no. Oh, I can't make the plan then. Oh, okay. Or podcasting is an afterthought where to someone's horror, I said, yeah, we used to just like, I don't know, throw 250 at Pandora and Key 4 because they could deliver it and it was always good. And then the person who works in marketing in-house goes, 250,000 American bald eagles? I'm like, yeah, dude. So it's a different scale that you're buying at that point. The other piece of it, candidly, is measurement. We work with some of the biggest podcast advertisers in the world. Everybody has this thing where they're like, well, they're brands. And I'm like, no, we buy performance. We go where the money comes back. We pay attention to ROI. And I think brands have many of the agencies in the space don't fully understand the opportunity that platforms like Magellan can give you in terms of creating an analogous measurement to the pixel-based advertising that's like nice and warm and cozy on the digital end.
Awesome. Let's talk about what makes podcasts work. So first of all, we know podcasting reaches a unique audience. In a collaborative study we did with SiriusXM, iHeart Ad Results, we found last year that audiences were actually quite different. Around 86% of podcast listener households were unique to podcasts. Around 75% of streaming households unique to streaming. And what makes the podcast content environment distinct, and why should brands care?
Well, we're talking about podcasting after 20 years. And I think what's super interesting is it started with the hosts. And I think that's where you have to start today. I think the audiences, like the credibility and authenticity of this advertising channel is driven from the relationships that the audience has with the creators. And I think it's that same relationship that ultimately advertisers almost have to build with those creators. And if you can start there, and that's where podcast advertising started 20 years ago, right? It was baked in host-read ads. And today you still have a lot of host-read ads being run. It's the core part of many of the plans. But I think it's also expanded from there. And while you keep the host at the center, I think now more and more people can actually execute plans that wrap in social and live events, and CTV, and kind of keep extending, and YouTube, right? And so you can really start to have a bigger and broader plan that still is centered around the host itself. And even if you aren't running host reads, and if you're extending into additional kind of pre-produced ads in the podcast space, a lot of that is content centered, right? There is a very tight link of success between the content and the advertising. I think that's what uniquely the audio sales teams working with agencies like Right Side Up have done, is that they've unlocked the value of the content and made sure that that was a core piece of how you communicate in terms of the voice, the style, like the preferences, and that you're ultimately hopefully building almost like long-term relationships between the brands and these hosts. So I think that content environment is super unique, and you layer on top of that, it's probably the most or the least like cluttered space that you're in. Like those personal relationships, like the listeners view it as like that they actually are in a relationship with these hosts, and the hosts are creating a world that they out of their lives they're now in, and it's not a part of the screen with all these things popping up. Like it's just a very different experience, and I think so long as you enter that world and maintain that authenticity and ride on that credibility, it's a completely different way to market than almost any other environments in the digital media space.
So Krystina, I see lots of nodding. Host-read ads outperform on basically every brand metric. What are the mechanics behind that in your experience?
I mean, you were talking about the relationship with the host and their audience. It's like a borderline parasocial relationship. It is actually fascinating. So I host a very small growth marketing podcast, and I've had people, and it's actually like terrifies me because I'm like, no, it only works if no one listens in my head. You know what I mean? I'm like, don't listen to me. But people are like, oh, I listened to that episode that you did with the DSW CMO, and oh my God, it was so great, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh my God, you like know my voice. You know me, you know who I am. Because this is what you're getting at this point, especially when it's this warm out. Like this is just what we're doing. So my thing is like, are we all craving authenticity? Right? Like literally there's a not insignificant part of me that's like, I am a girl from Brooklyn who is speaking, who can see a fucking yacht. Like, you guys, what is happening right now? Like, it's insane. But like, how many hosts do you hear that talk like that and you're just like, oh my God, she's so real. And I just appreciate so much that she still says she has imposter syndrome, right? Or like, this person shared their family's truth with us. And oh my God, how did, imagine just being an advertiser and you're in the middle of this like deeply poignant, wonderful experience. And there's two options for an ad, right? One is a host-read ad, where one of the brands we worked with one time, they were a pretty small fertility startup. Unfortunately, one of the hosts that we wanted to work with was really priced out for our budget, but she cut the rate in half because she believed in the product and wanted to talk about her own fertility journey. That is still one of the things that I'm most proud. Like, we've done so many things like that. On the flip of it, I was driving down the 101 and was listening to Lady Gaga and Oprah on an interview, and then it cut out mid like her talking about her fibromyalgia diagnosis. I'm crying on the 101, right? A blaring ad comes through and it's like, and Weight Watchers, new year, new you. And I'm like, oh, I feel like a piece of shit right now. I still have a negative brand perception in my head, and it's been like 5 years. So my point is like, I don't know, Cam, what do you think is a better experience?
Well, I just enjoy all advertising, personally.
Oh, I like to tell I remind my husband occasionally when he complains about ads, I'm like, they pay for the mortgage. We love ads in this house.
Never use an ad blocker.
No, if you're in this industry and you're using an ad blocker, talk to me. Like, come on. Anyway. Blasphemy.
So, no conversation about audio is complete without talking about video. And in Q1, we observed that there was a 2.5% response rate from podcasts with video compared to 1.5% from podcasts that delivered via audio only. Rick, obviously podcasting, video, it's a hot thing right now. Does that change what makes it effective, or does the audio first foundation survive the transition?
I always laugh about that because we've been selling video simulcasts for 5 or 6, 7 years now. Before it even became, you were buying from us 7 years ago, some simulcast that nobody really put two and two together. I think that the video element, it's a great place to for discovery of a podcast. But the reality of it is, we're all driven by ROI for our brands, and audio. All the research will show audio does an incredible job of returning ROI. Not that video doesn't, but audio does a much better job of returning that ROI. Videos, again, great for discovery of the podcast, but really, we always encourage at Libsyn our simulcast or our video-centric podcasters for that creator to try to move their audience into an audio listener because of that great. It's a much more valuable listener to Right Side Up and every brand we work with.
Yeah, and the CPMs in the medium reflect that. I don't know why we're doing this thing right now where everybody has amnesia and forgot what we did to digital banner inventory like 12 years ago, where we shoved everything right to the bottom of the barrel and just commoditized the shit out of it. Like, do you guys want to live in that world? I don't. I like my comfy little ecosystem where I put money in and more money comes back out and people believe in the products they're selling and everybody makes money, to be very clear. Like, capitalism, yay. But like, it is mediated by the value that's exchanged at every point in the transaction.
Yeah, but, I mean, I think podcasting is going to continue to evolve, and it's going to change. And you and I like change, so we're going to enjoy this. And I think the way we're thinking about it is, in order to have more discovery, which is what Rick's talking about, there are new audiences coming in or new placements that now amazing content can go. And so I think that there's a recognition from all the CTV platforms, right, from the streaming wars out there, that podcast content is incredible. And I think one of the reasons the advertising is incredible is the content's incredible. So of course other people want it. And I think that this is just going to be an evolution where we're going to be able to add visual elements. But I think it is true that we cannot lose track of the fact that you still need to make sure your content is great in a listening mode. There's still going to be a lot of consumption, even if you have a video version of your podcast available, that still happens in the listen mode. So getting that right, I think, is going to be a little tricky on the creator side of the fence. But hopefully on the advertising side, we continue to make sure that those creatives work in a listening environment, even if we're adding a visual element to them, right? And so I think getting both of those right, I think, is going to be important.
So one of the topics that came up here just now that is very near and dear to my heart is making money and ROI. Let's talk about that in the context of measurement. So for a long time, podcast measurement really leaned heavily on promo codes, vanity URLs, and now, of course, with more digital measurement, we can obtain broader performance signals. Krystina, I'd love to hear a little bit about, from your perspective, what changed. What does better measurement unlock for a buyer?
Confidence, and with confidence comes money. Some of my favorite business development people in the space have been like, yeah, so performance advertisers sent my kids to college, thank you. I'm like, yeah, I love that for you. And the reason why is because the renewal rates for advertisers who focus on performance. Like, there are advertisers that we work with who have been working with the same shows for, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years now. And everybody's really realistic about audience growth and prices things realistically. Hey.
The price is going up.
Yeah. I'll pay a
Just
higher.
speak for the publishers.
I will pay a higher CPM if you promise me to not ruin the experience with ads, ad load wise. And I'll pay a higher CPM if the quality of the content remains.
This is getting good.
I mean, it's true. I'll pay more. I blew somebody's mind today. Actually, I shouldn't even say this. So, one of the guys on our team, Grant Durando, brilliant dude. Catch him for a beer, he'll blow your mind. He was talking to a publisher, and the publisher was like, yeah, man, I sell out those 2 shows every year. And he looked at him and he goes, you're pricing it too low. I was like, when's the last time an agency or agency-like object told you your pricing was too low? And we said, just like, we gave him free price elasticity consulting on the spot. And he's like, oh. And if it happens to make an agency's life more difficult, I'm so sorry, I'm not. But do better.
And that's a great point, because content creators, I think about one back in December. We had a discussion with this guy. He will go unnamed, but we called him to tell him we need to raise your CPMs. He said, well, what's going on? It's, well, you sold out, and we got to do a few things, and we're just, it was a casual discussion that we have every day with our content creators. But it's almost like, well, why don't we just add more ads to it? Don't raise your price. Like, why are you arguing about us saying raise your price? But he was right. His campaigns were paying out on an ROI basis for most of the agencies that were buying the show. But his attitude was, let's just go from 4 mid-rolls an episode to 8 or maybe 10 if you guys are selling out every month. And our response was, do another show a week. Do a special episode. Let's not get more than 4 in an hour, because that's what makes podcasting special. That really tight connection with your audience. You're not abusing their ears with 8 or 10 or 15 ads in an hour. And I really think it's kind of an unhidden part of the business where you need to counsel creators to not get overboard when everything's going really good. And that's hard to do because we all want to make more money.
Yeah, and to the point about measurement, to just bring it back, we share performance with our partners. It's indexed. It's blinded. Like, we're not out here trying to be like, hey, would you like to know exactly this very private tech company's CPA? Cool. Would you love to give it to their competitor? Like, we're not stupid. But we do share that information. And the reason why is twofold. One, we view our partners as partners. If you take one thing away from this and you're an agency listening, stop calling them vendors. It annoys the shit out of me. Because without them, you do not have the ability to do the work that we do. Without the partners that we work with, if they're dialed in, if again, everybody's making money in this ecosystem and you're rewarding them with, the first looks at RFPs, you're rewarding them with, hey, I've got this weird brand coming in and they don't even know their TAM and like, we don't even know their target market yet, but like, I'm going to do this test and whatever, right? Get weird with me. So that's my first piece. The other piece is like, I want everybody to understand the value of their media. And this is like last year, we were watching an agency on a panel and they were like, well, you can't tell them how the media performs because what if they raise the price on you? And I said, well, then you're working with not nice people or you're not scary enough. I'm a nice person. I'm a kind person. I wouldn't say I'm nice. It's the difference between New York and LA, right? So like, that's for me. I look at it and I go, if everybody's behaving themselves in the ecosystem and we're all measuring and sharing that performance as openly as is responsible, then we have to just have a little bit of trust in each other to be like, yeah, let's improve this. Let's, like, if somebody on our team goes back to somebody on Rick's team is like, hey, this show, it's a banger, but this brand, here's a performance, it's only indexing at 80% of their goal, and you're 60% behind everybody else. That gives them the ammunition to go back to the creator and say, hey, your inventory is not worth what you think it is. And if you can have a nice conversation about that because it's rooted in data. It's not rooted in like vibes or like, oh, my boss told me to negotiate a quarter off of that CPM so we can show value to our clients.
New York versus LA right here in Cannes. And
I say New York and LA. My friend LA's me down and I New York her up,
There it is. And
Nebraska.
from the supply side,
Right.
does having deeper attribution data change the conversations that you're having with advertisers?
Well, I mean, one thing that we're looking at is trying to ultimately ingest the attribution data into some of our tools, because ideally publishers would be able to help buyers optimize the buys they have because they could link it to the supply that they're selling. Because when you do want to improve performance, it's often not on a single show. It's on an aggregation of shows. And then people are like, well, what's working, what's not working? Can we get this at the episode level? Can we get this at the show level? So I think that is going to be the next step, is really enabling, first, I think people to kind of have the data, have the visibility between the attribution and supply. And after that, eventually kind of building models that can happen both by the buy side and the sell side. And I had some really interesting conversations here in general on how I think agentic buying is really going to change the dynamic between the buy and sell side. And it was interesting to me talking to a company that said, we think there's actually a lot of responsibility on the buyers to optimize, on the sellers from the publishers to optimize things, not just on the buy side. right? Because the buyer might say the overall buy is working across all the publishers, but each publisher should be incentivized that the buy is better for them, right? And so there should be give and take that both sides, I think, can ultimately use attribution data and actually help each other make media work better. And so I'm looking forward to that.
I mean, then the question for publishers becomes, now that you're no longer selling to a human, I like to say I love relationship-based buying.
Oh, it's still going to be humans.
No. Okay, there's going to be humans in the loop, but hear me out.
Okay.
This is when GEO becomes important. Like, Right Side Up launched a GEO practice last year. And I should say, as part of our affiliate practice, because the question is like, okay, well, now I'm not a human selling to a human. Now this is content, this is whatever we're selling, but we are selling to an agent. And so now it's agent to agent, but then you also have to have the content make sense to like human brain. So it's going to change everything for how media is packaged, how it's sold, how it's valued. That's fascinating to me.
I think it's be great. And I think one thing that I'm excited about is I think some of the AI engines, they recognize the value of the contextual signals, of the transcripts, right, of the host signals, of the guest signals. And I think this is going to be one of the first times, because I think programmatic through the DSPs is not really allowed. I think this level of like innovation where you're really enabling demand to connect to the ad server, to the supply side directly, and then open up show specific signals and schedules of when the shows are launching and all this information that ultimately it will be an overwhelming amount of information if you're looking at 10,000 shows. But if we can't have agents in the mix, then at least we can start kind of figure out what would be the right starting point for the brand in terms of someone new getting in, for example.
So these next few questions I'd like to open up for the group here. And let's shift gears and talk a little bit about brand suitability. So brand suitability is one of the reasons that in some cases brands have been slow to invest in podcasting. Is that concern still valid, or has the industry solved it?
So we've integrated in the platform both ComScore brand suitability and Barometer brand suitability, and that's at the episode level. So it should not be a blocker. I will go back a little bit to the point though that you're trying to enter an authentic like community. It is not FCC like studio structured, like we can predict what everyone's saying, and that is the beauty of it. So there is a bit of give and take that has to happen as brands kind of look at what's suitable for them. And I've seen a lot of change where brands may have started like very rigid, but as they see it working, they realize they need to become a little more flexible.
Oh, do you mean they make money and then all of a sudden they're like, you know what, actually, I don't care if they use the F word in an ad. It's really funny because to me it's a calibration. If anybody's a fan of Bill Burr, love his show. I've loved Bill for years and years. I think he's one of the smartest comics in the game. But Bill's ads, honestly, search for them on YouTube. If you don't like foul language, don't. When we work with advertisers and they're like, we should do Bill Burr, and we're like, yeah, it's going to crank and it's going to sell whatever you want because he doesn't take everybody, right? He's really selective about what he reads for. But then on the flip of it, he like dissociates sometimes during the ads and just starts talking about things that are completely irrelevant. But he's going to sell a bunch of, I mean, I've got stories like find me for a drink, but like he's going to sell it. And so we send it to brands and we're like, you cool? And sometimes they're like, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes they're like, absolutely not. Some of our brands use Barometer to calibrate every impression that goes out. Some of our brands are like, I don't give a shit. We're selling CBD gummies. Like, who cares? You know, but it's a calibration, and it's brand safety should be the backbone of the medium. Brand suitability is subjective and is set at the brand level. And maybe don't be prudes about it if you want the channel to work, but like if you need to, it's fine. I worked in pharma for 10 years. I get it.
Yeah, podcast audiences who actively download content. They spend 2 hours with a show weekly. If they're offended by language, they're not going to do that. And it's as simple as that. Don't overanalyze the brand suitability or the safety factor when audiences really go out of their way to listen to what we have to sell.
Yeah. If they were like, oh my God, not me, they wouldn't be listening to the third hour of that show where we have a mid-roll in, and you're like, oh my God, is it still a mid-roll? That's like the 6th ad or whatever. And you're like, you're selling a bunch of toothbrushes.
So the topic of agentic came up earlier, and let's talk for a second about the other side of that spectrum, which is there are certain aspects of host-read ads, like host refusals, manual buying. Some of that sounds inefficient, but on the flip side, why is that actually a good thing?
Do you trust a friend who gives you every product recommendation ever? Or do you trust a friend that's like, listen, I have a setting powder that's going to change your life. And I recommend one product every so often to you, but like girl to girl, like here's what I've got for you, right? I trust that friend. I actually trust her with my life. So like that's the kind of trust you're transacting in. The other piece about it, it is a feature, not a bug. So my colleague, Lindsay Piper Shaw, is incredible, and people are like, oh, they know her from like being a marketing consultant, whatever. Lindsay is actually essentially the COO and like backbone and program manager of our practice. We have automated so much. We actually have automated a lot more than publishers know, but that's because we've kept the human in the loop, and she's done it in a way that's like, I mean, like learning more about Claude Code than any girl who was a history major thought she ever would. But like also women in STEAM, like she can do it all. So it's like, that's what I mean. We're figuring it out as we go along, but it's a feature, not a bug. When this gets really easy to buy is the time when I'm going to be way less interested in it, and I'm probably going to move on to the next thing that's really difficult to buy because there's ROI in those hills, you know?
There's ROI in those hills. I love that.
I love money.
So, all right, we got to bring this plane in for a landing, or I should say, we got to bring this boat to the dock. I guess we can. What's the first step you tell a brand marketer in this room to take if they've never spent $1 in podcasting? Rick, let's start with you.
Wow. Don't get caught up in the details, but do it right. Listen to people guide you through the process, and take that advice to some degree of measurement. Use people that are smarter in the space to help guide you, because we all want every campaign to be successful. They're not all going to be successful, but we want everyone to be successful, right?
Yeah. You can try to go it alone yourself in-house. I would prefer that you work with a specialty agency or consultant like us, and it doesn't have to be us. Talk to a few, hire the smartest ones. I won't say who it is. But listen to them is a great point. Pressure test what they're telling you against the rest of your media mix. Test at a budget that feels suitable to your brand and meaningful to the extent that is going to drive results. Do not test one show with 2 spots or one network with 3 shows and think that you have exhausted podcast advertising. Because when I hear people tell me, oh, podcasts didn't work, I'm like, who ran it? Are they even at your company anymore? Like, what are we talking about? So I would say that, and like speak plainly with a specialist in this case and understand deeply what you're getting yourself into, because those manual nuances of the channel mean that you could burn a lot of money making mistakes. We've made all the mistakes that there are to make. Like, I mean, honestly, maybe not. We'll find out. But let's learn from ours.
And I'll pile on there too. We had a brand discussion about 8 or 10 months ago with a brand who wasn't seeing success in podcasting. They had a requirement with their large agency. Wilco, nobody in the room here that I can see. Probably sitting right out there. They would only buy the top 10 podcasts. And it's like, if you're limiting yourself to that and you're judging ROI based on the top 10, which are generally going to be the most expensive podcasts, of course your ROI is not going to work. So again, be a little bit smarter about it. Be a little more flexible when it comes to podcasting. It's not buying network television. It's a little I hate to say it's a little more simplistic than that.
But what about the agency's margins, Rick?
Of course.
It's hard to add to that, though. I think some of the top 10 shows convert quite well, so that's the only thing I would say. But other than that,
Absolutely.
I echo both of you guys. Yeah.
Grace got a couple of bangers, no notes. But the question is, are they lazy media planners? Are they just literally looking at the Magellan ranker is great? Are you looking at the Magellan ranker and literally ordering from like a takeout place? What are you doing with your life? Don't do that. It's a good ranker though. But like maybe do better.
Build a plan, use the tools, and execute.
Wow, what a summary, Cameron.
That's it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
And everybody wave their fans up here to throw slow
please.
freeze.
Fan me.